building, isn't it?
This is nice.
Designer did a good job.
Got my attention.
Okay, ready?
Travis is ready.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Today is October 3rd, 2024. I'd like to welcome everybody to the airport board meeting. We'll open up initially for any public comment. Okay, we'll dive right into the agenda. It's been a little bit since we've met, but do we have a motion on the review of the minutes from the July 11th meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, Jesse on the first, second by Claire. All right, number two, financial report, Jordan.
Any specific questions on the finances that you want me to hit on? I know Christian's going to talk about Wings and Wheels performance a little bit later, so, but anything outside of that?
Are we keeping up with capital improvements
Um,
as far as money?
You mean funding it?
Our portion.
Airport revenue, operating revenue covers operating expenses for the most part. When we do capital projects, then we're having to, the FAA funds, 90% of it. And it seems like, is it the state funds 3 or 4%, and then we have to cover 3 or 4%?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, I think that's part of our 5-year, 10-year forecast,
I guess my point was, is the revenue now keeping pace with the costs, or is Spanish Fork still supplementing
Yeah.
some?
In prior years, the cities, it used to be Spanish Fork and Springville would contribute about $100,000. So last year, the general fund transferred in $95,000, and you can think of that as tax dollars, going to subsidize the airport. That is not budgeted for this year. So this would be the first year where there isn't that transfer coming in from the airport. That is the result of a couple of things. If you scroll up a little bit, Christian, you can look and see that undeveloped ground lease, that $374,000. I think that's the budget number. Last year was the first year that we got any revenue there for undeveloped ground lease. And then the developed ground lease. So that number, those two numbers have really increased over the last 3 or 4 years, making it so that we aren't needing to transfer that $100,000 in from the general fund.
And we've got a very detailed pavement maintenance plan and capital expenditure plan for the next 10 years out that tracks with our budget projections as well.
So with some of this new revenue, can some of the capital improvements be maybe moved up a little? Or are they still scheduled?
They're still scheduled. This is our first year being in the positive and being independent from the city as far as funding. So pending development timelines and completion from all the different hangar developments, that is a definite probability. But we're going to be cautious until hangars are completed and paying their ground leases.
Just got word from Travis in the back. Just make sure the mic is pointed towards your face because he can't hear us. So that's all of us.
Sometimes that's good.
It wasn't just you. It was all of us.
Thank you.
So that those ground lease revenues are a big chunk of the total revenue for the airport. The third biggest one being Wings and Wheels, right? And it makes a little bit of money, but not a significant amount to try and fund capital and operations. Nice of Matt to join us. I like it.
Hey.
Hey.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing to point out about this year's budget. If you'll scroll down to the expenses, Christian, we can look and see if there's any major. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of capital going on down to the 5300s. So it's got a $1.4 million budget. Yeah, scroll up a little bit. The big capital expense being that pavement maintenance of $300,000.
And that one was 90% state funded.
Okay.
So the majority of that will be a UDOT grant for the pavement maintenance we did on the runway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on last year's performance on the finances? If you want to pull that up, Christian, we can take a look at it. But, yeah, so you can see that we had 303,000 there in undeveloped ground, 214 in developed ground lease. And that undeveloped ground lease was the first year, I believe, that we got that revenue. So that's a huge influx of revenue that we weren't seeing before. And then once that's undeveloped, or once that's developed, it'll go to a higher rate, right, Christian? Because
Yes.
they pay
Yep.
a lower per square foot.
Yeah, what does that timeline look like?
I don't know.
It's kind of up to the developers, but from what I'm seeing so far, Pady Aviation is on schedule with pouring foundations and their different phasing plans. So we should expect to see at least 2 to 3 of their hangar rows completed and functional by next summer, and paying that 43-cent ground lease rate. And then I know that Utah Aviation is a little bit behind schedule, but typically they can make up a lot of ground in the winter with their construction crews. So I'd expect to see them at least putting up steel early spring as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. As you see the airport grow, you're seeing that with the finances as well, that the way we did things 10 years ago, it's a very different situation now. And in 5 years, it'll probably be quite a bit different as well. Some growing pains there. Yeah. But any other questions on the finances? Or anything you want me to prepare for next meeting?
Well, you got about a 20, almost a $40,000 difference in your budget versus unearned, or budget versus actual. What?
Yeah.
Where does that difference go?
If you scroll that down, so the operating revenue was, or the actual revenue was 768. We thought we'd get 781. If you scroll right, that's actually not too far off. Yeah, just scroll up and then to the right a little bit. So yeah, we collected 98% of the budgeted revenue, so not too far off. When the revenues are greater than expenses, it falls into the fund's cash reserves. So the way government accounting works is you have different funds, and those funds are very separate, and it allows them to have their own separate cash balance. So when you have revenue greater than expenses, it just falls into the airport's cash reserves.
The airport has cash reserves?
It does, yes.
And when it doesn't?
Then you're pulling from cash reserves, or you're having to ask the general fund for money.
Which they've taken away. Right.
Well, knowing that it's performing self-sufficient, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just kind of held in escrow.
That's right. That's right, city escrow.
Okay. I'll go sit down.
Thank you.
Jordan?
Any more questions for Christian? I'm sorry, Jordan. All right, Christian, facilities report.
Okay, items 3, 4, and 5 are all kind of in a line on this presentation, so I'll just hit all 3 of them. Let's see. These are our August operations numbers. So we had 10,000, almost 11,000 operations in August, bringing at the end of the month of August our operations total to 78,120 operations. September operations, we had just over 10,000 operations as well, which also included a week-long runway closure, which is kind of interesting. That brings our year total as of the end of September to 88,363 operations, and that puts us on track to have over 115,000 operations in 2024. Update on some of our projects. We recently did our runway rehabilitation. Here's some photos from that. Kim Sylvester with JUB will be updating us on that a little bit later. We also finished painting the entire airport aside from the runway and taxiway. So we've got a new paint scheme around our 100 low lead fuel pump and new striping down all of our taxi lanes and on all of our tie downs. We also completed an additional 6 tie downs on the west end of the main airport ramp. And that is the final amount of tie downs that we'll probably be building on the south side of the airport, just due to space constraints on the south side now. We've also recently completed piping 2 ditches. The one on the end of, the Hangar 90 row, and then the longer ditch in front of our new tie-down pad on the west end. Next summer, we have received a $60,000 UDOT grant to end up putting turf on both of these areas. So by next spring or summer, we'll see these have a sprinkling system go in and turf installed.
Could you go back one slide? Those two kind of out there by themselves, what are those for?
Those are taxiway light vaults. So those are just concrete collars that go around those vault plates. No. Yeah, that's further to the east.
How many total tie downs do we have on the airport?
We have 79 paved tie downs.
So we have some pavements.
We have some gravel spots here and there at the end of taxi lanes, and we can always find additional spots, but prefer to keep it to paved tie downs. Yes. We have our gate access upgrade system kicking off here within the next couple of months. That's been delayed to a lot of the other projects that we've been wrapping up this summer, but that's our next big focus. So starting within the next 2 weeks, we'll have signs up on gates and around the airport and emails out to pre-register for that gate upgrade. We'll require a short questionnaire that requires acknowledgement of airport driving rules and liability as well when we have users registered for either a key card or a app to access the gates. And we'll try to have the majority of users pre-set up on either the app or the key card prior to switching over to this system. Are there any questions about this gate system?
Will the remotes work anymore
No.
than the key card? Christian, some of us still have flip phones, so the app isn't going to work.
Yeah, and that's why we'll offer the key card system.
Okay.
Along with that, we'll be installing camera systems with our gates as well, just to heighten security around the airport. Agenda item number 4, we've got our biannual airport survey that we completed 2 months ago. I'll just kind of go through each question and pause for a minute on each question so you can look at the data. So the first question is, what is your association with Spanish Fork Airport? The majority being either renting hangar space or hangar ownership. Airport management has been sending out a monthly newsletter for over 18 months. Do you feel more informed with what is happening at Spanish Fork Airport? The majority being 97% yes. When thinking of the Spanish Fork Airport as a whole, do you view the airport as, and that's a 59% favorable, 31% very favorable, and then 2% neutral, and almost 7% unfavorable. Is it difficult to contact airport staff? 97% no. In your opinion, what are Spanish Fork's main issues? Threat of increased user fees, landing fees, lots of student traffic, making approaches to the airport very tricky, over-regulating, too many flight schools traffic, that was mentioned 22 times in the responses, lack of hangars, tie-down and run-up areas not being available, that was mentioned 4 times, need for full-service 100 low lead, rising fees and costs, and AWAS unreliability. Are there any immediate hazards that could be mitigated by airport management? These are the top responses. Designate or construct run-up areas. We're working on several options and looking at either painting current pavements to reflect run-ups or looking at paving run-up areas in the future. Congestion around the fuel pump. A month ago, we finished that new paint scheme around the fuel pump, and we'll continue gathering data on that congestion and how that paint scheme is working. Better weather reporting. We did have our AWAS cleaned and inspected recently, and within the last 6 weeks have not had any recent outages or outage reports. and then putting red obstruction lights on approach end of runway 12 power poles. And we are actually actively working with Rocky Mountain Power on a pole realignment there.
On that one, is there a way to dim the PAPIs on 1-2?
That is a great question. I've never heard that, but I can
They're
research
super
that.
bright.
Okay. Per all hangar lease agreements, airport management has the ability to conduct hangar inspections. Airport management has typically been sporadic with these inspections. Would you be in support of consistent annual hangar inspections to ensure that hangars are being used for aeronautical purposes and there are no fire hazards, among other things? 73% in support. As an airport that accepts FAA funds, we are required to adhere to FAA policy regarding hangar use. According to the FAA, an airport's responsibility for hangar use is the following. 1, manage the use of hangars through an airport leasing program that requires a written lease agreement or permit. 2, monitor the use of hangars on the airport and take steps to prevent unapproved non-aeronautical use. 3, minimize the length of time to provide hangar space for those on a waiting list and require non-aviation users pay a fair market rental for the use of the hangar, and if needed, the hangar is returned to aviation use under circumstances where temporary non-aeronautical use of a vacant hangar is permitted. Do you support airport management monitoring and enforcing hangar usage to more closely align hangar usage with AIP grant assurances? That is a 48% yes, 23% unsure of what AIP grant assurances are, 18% unsure, and 9% no. Do you feel that too many hangars at Spanish Fork are mostly being used for non-aeronautical related storage? 61% no, 38% yes. Do you have any suggestions or comments regarding hangar usage and aircraft storage at Spanish Fork? If there is a plane in there, it should count. All other criteria is irrelevant and too invasive. We have enough bureaucracy in aviation. Fewer restrictions is better. I don't know the percentage of hangars that are non-aviation related, but I rarely see some hangars open. In my opinion, hangars should be for aviation use only, or at least primarily. It's an airport. Hangars should be used for aircraft, not toys and junk. Just enforce current rules on usage. I do not think that the hangars need to be used for aeronautical uses. If there isn't dangerous things going on, then why should we care so much about what's going on inside someone's hangar that they own? And lastly, it is frustrating the amount of hangars used as storage units.
It's kind of mixed responses.
Yeah, very mixed. That's the end of the data. With that being said, we are looking at starting up more consistent hangar inspections. Would the board have any words on that or guidance or any thoughts on doing annual hangar inspections?
I think it would be helpful. Enforcement is going to be very difficult.
Yeah, what do you plan on doing with this bit of information that you get from going through all these inspections? If it's nothing, then don't waste your time.
Yeah, mostly we're looking at FAA requirements to make sure that we're within compliance. You know, we have had several instances in the past where hangars are being used for permanent residences, which is against FAA standards and the grant agreements that we have signed with the FAA. And if we are caught with not being in compliance with the FAA, we could lose grant funding or be forced to repay that funding, which is in the tens of millions. And so we're looking at just being in compliance with FAA guidelines.
I am concerned about the safety. Hangars abut each other, and I think it's important that you conduct your inspections often, and that you verify that people are using them properly as far as safety is concerned, and that there are fire extinguishers or fire systems available, prevention systems or put-out systems, so that people in the row can feel comfortable leaving their airplane there.
Well, with that, hangar insurance, too, is a safety item.
Yes. Yep. We have done that in the past when we've done sporadic inspections, so we would loop him in.
What would an inspection look like?
Can you come up to the stand and speak so those online can hear?
If you were to come to my hangar, for example, and do an inspection, what would that look like?
Yeah.
You contact me ahead of time, or?
Yep, we'd
you
contact
just
you
go-
ahead of time and arrange a time and date to meet, and then we'd arrange a time between either an airport employee other than myself or myself and the fire marshal to meet with you. Take 5 minutes, maybe no more than 10. We'd look to make sure you're within compliance as far as hazardous materials or fuel storage within your hangar. We'd make sure that there is an aircraft in there, so it is being used for aeronautical purposes. And then the fire marshal will just make sure that electrical outlets and electrical panels are clear of different items, things like that, and that you're not living in the hangar. So really short checklist. We would have a checklist form that we have on a clipboard as we come in, just to make notes or check through things. And then if there are any compliance issues, we'd give you a copy of that, and then a time period of 30 or 60 days to come within compliance.
Okay.
Hey, Christian, this is Matt. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, correct me if I'm wrong, but about 24 months ago, the FAA came out with guidance on what was approved to be in a hangar. Is that correct? Because there was a nationwide concern of non-aeronautical items stored in the hangar. And I believe at the board meeting we talked about this, about what could and couldn't be stored in a hangar. Is that right?
Kim has a great answer for you.
Well, I have an answer.
All right.
Yeah, so they've backed off on their airplanes only guidance to say now the primary use has to be for an aircraft, and that should be in operational or an aircraft that you are building and making progress on. So yeah, not just a storage unit. If you want storage, the rates are much higher in town than on an airport, and so we can't be subsidizing people to just store their vehicles and junk, as it said on the survey. But yeah, so that's really what they're looking for, is the primary use for aircraft. Can the aircraft also get in and out unimpeded? It's one thing to have an aircraft in there, maybe up on stilts, or it can't be blocked from being able to be pulled in and out of the hangar. To help.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder if then, as we move forward with this, is I'd be in favor of increasing our inspections, or just actually doing them kind of for the first time. But we might want to provide some guidance to the hangar owners so that they understand what we're looking for. Because I know this is a hot topic item. I know AOPA has put out a lot of guidance on this, but I think if the hangar owners understand that, as long as those criteria is met that Kim just mentioned, that we're just looking for probably the two biggest items are safety items like hazmat, and then residency, right? Those are kind of the two biggest items we're going after. So I think as long as they understand that if their primary purpose is a hangar, that we're not going to worry if there is a car or
Correct.
A boat or something stored in the corner. As long as the primary purpose is aviation, then they don't have to worry. We don't cause an unnecessary uproar amongst our hangar owners.
Yes, I agree in that too. I didn't know if you had mentioned hazmat. Matt is a good point. I didn't know if you had mentioned that, Christian.
Yep.
Looking for large quantities of hazmat or fuel is not supposed to be stored in hangars either.
Yeah, there are a handful of hangars with either planes under maintenance or being built. Are there any FAA guidelines as far as that goes?
That one's also vague. It's more making progress, on that, and that really is hard to pin down, because some people may take a kit airplane and get it on day one, and then they may have it built in 6 months. Somebody may take 10 years. So that's more of a judgment and left open to you guys to really determine what's what there.
Is there any considerations on how they inspect new hangars versus old hangars with different building codes from way back when versus now? And
I
how
think
does that play
that
in?
primarily is up to the fire marshal, which we have a great fire marshal here in town who's done a great job in our past hangar inspections that we've done. So I don't think there would be any huge concern with that. You want to come up, Bryson?
what are the options that would be exercised or could be exercised for enforcement? So somebody isn't using it for aeronautical purposes. You give them the 30 days. Then what happens? What's the enforcement?
I hope that never happens. At that point, you're in violation of the lease and could face lease termination, or the board could look at instituting some type of fine in our fee schedule. But hopefully, we look to have a really good relationship with all of our hangar owners and help them understand why we're doing these, and that, we're just here to comply with the FAA.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's a great idea to inspect. I just wondering what the options are for enforcement.
Any final questions or comments on that?
On the survey, it looked like there was only about 35 or 40 people that responded. What was the population size of that survey that went out?
700 emails.
So you got 5% back, basically.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
All right, I'll move into item 5, Wings and Wheels report. Ticket sales, we had 6,117 tickets sold, and then we do have kids 10 and under and free that get into the event. So our gate helpers counted roughly one child under 10 for every adult ticket sold. We also did 1,476 sponsor and booth comp tickets between sponsors and all the booths or pilot who attended. That's an addition, yeah. So overall, we had 7,593 tickets that came through the gate, and looking at child attendance, roughly over 15,000 people attended. So hard number to nail down, just because we do have kids that get in free. But from looking at things that being at the event, it was probably the same attendance level or greater than we had last year. Revenue and expenses. Our ticket revenue was $131,000. Our sponsor revenue was just shy of $50,000. Our car event registration between the car show and car racing was $8,800, and our merchandise sales were $5,900. And then we did receive a Recreation Arts and Parks grant to bring in some historical aircraft for $12,000, bringing our total revenue and expenses, or revenue, at $208,000 almost. And then our current cleared expenses are at $122,000, and then our remaining expenses that will be paid within the following month are about $45,000. Any questions about revenue and expenses?
What were we hoping that to be at the end of the day? What were we hoping to clear?
A little bit of an unknown. I guess, Jordan, do you have any comments on that?
I can tell you what we budgeted. We budgeted $255,000 in revenue and $125,000 in expense.
So well under that.
What
80,000
was the greatest expenses in bringing in the aircraft?
Definitely the vintage Warbird aircraft. I can get a number for you later. I don't have a number off the top of my head, but that generally probably, from what I can recall, is about $50,000 to $60,000 for all of the vintage aircraft that we brought in.
I was just wondering how you ever got the King Cobra here. That was nice.
And at the end of the day, airport management's goal is to at least break even on the event. So we did increase ticket prices this year, and we did bring in a lot more revenue than we have in past years. So we would look at, potentially lowering ticket prices in future years, just to, at a minimum, break even. This past year was the first year we did a ticket increase, and we did a tiered system. So 3 months ago when tickets went on sale, they were $15. And then as we got close to the event, tickets increased in price just to drive online ticket sales versus at the gate sales. In past years, we've had a huge bottleneck at the gate with people trying to purchase tickets from a cashier.
Just for your information, every performer on the flight line wants to come back next year, every single one. So that's pretty amazing. Even the California five, the T-34s, they want to come back.
Even the ones that got water in their smoke.
That was Danny, and then the two from Washington. Yeah, they just said, please, just please ensure that it's real oil next time. So they were nice about it, even though they took the tanks out and cleaned them, and they were nice.
The B-25 liked it so much they decided to stay.
I think somebody hijacked it.
They got repoed.
Such jerks.
As far as sponsors goes, we've had the most sponsors that the event has ever had, and between sponsorship dollars and ticket sales, that enabled a great Warbird lineup this year, as well as some great aerobatic acts. So, not only thank you to our sponsors and those that just attended the event as viewers, but also thank you to all our volunteers and helpers that helped. Brian, Brad, Matt, all of our board members that helped. And we did get about 200 volunteers from the community that come out and help us. So big effort, but big reward. Any questions about Wings and Wheels?
Are you ever going to try and increase the scope or the size of the Wings and Wheels event over the years, or is it?
Can you
is it-
say that in the mic for those online?
Are you ever going to try and increase the scope or the size of the Wings and Wheels event, to make it bigger or just more performers or?
Yeah. I think from what we saw this year, as far as the outlay and map of the event, we are kind of maxed out as far as space utilization. I'm not sure what will happen when the north side of the airport is built out and we have more space over there. But as far as the planning side of things and the space side of things, I think this year was kind of the max of where we'd like to keep things in future years.
The timeline, too, is utilized the full amount of time. We ran until 5:15. So that's quite a span.
Yeah, it was a pretty packed 9-hour day. We had something going on almost every 15 minutes.
Yeah, and a lot of the patrons, I don't think most of them stayed the whole time. They came and went. So it's a long time to spend with your family in the sun. So it's pretty good time.
Anything else? All right, One-Way Project Report, JUB.
I do want to say if we
Before
are-
that,
Go ahead, Matt.
sorry, Kimberly. I was slow to press the mute, but I just want to hurry on that Wings and Wheels. Just a thank you to Christian and all the staff and all the countless hours that went into that event. That's a huge undertaking. So, as far as the board, very appreciative of everyone, what they're doing on that. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Thanks, Matt. As far as the runway maintenance project that was just mostly completed, we shut down the runway and the taxiway for about 5 days in September. Straight stripe painting came in, knocked it all out, and got it open back up again. They did a little extra work that we had requested on taxiway A. On the north side between Alpha 4 and Alpha 6. And then, so everything looks great. And then we're on track to have the final paint completed on the 14th. And that will be 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You probably saw the email Christian sent out last night notifying all the users. Oh, you got some good pictures, too. So right now there is no beads in the paint, FYI, but the beads will be added back in on the following Monday, on the 14th. Any questions?
Thanks, Kimberly.
Still you, Kim.
Oh, you want to move on to the next item?
Let's do it.
FAA tower application.
Okay, so That's a process. And forgive me, I am reporting on Neil's behalf, who's been really spearheading this, but he couldn't be here today, so he gave me a rundown on it. What was holding up in the first place is we needed the ALP that we had updated during the ALP update project to be actually approved by the FAA. And then that just got approved a few weeks ago. And right on the heels of that, we resubmitted another ALP update showing the 4 tower locations on it. And that is right now going through the airspace process. That takes about 45 days for that to get completed. We have finished the application, and we're waiting for that ALP update to be with the contract tower locations to be approved by the FAA before, and then attach that to the application, and then we'll submit the application, and then we wait a little bit. Refer back to my notes here. Once the application is received by the FAA will evaluate it and do a benefit cost analysis on it. And then one of the other things that we'll do in the meantime is we're coming up on the Airport Capital Improvement Program updates. Those are due in November, beginning November 8th, I believe. So there'll be a meeting with FAA, and we'll want to make sure we add on the project to install a contract tower onto the capital improvements plan, the 5-year plan, so that that's the other piece that needs to happen as well. Once they get the benefit cost analysis completed, then we look through trying to get the funding in line. The funding's coming from the bipartisan infrastructure legislature money that's came out. There's one more year of that, so we're trying to position to get that last year, get in for the FY26 funding on that money. And then once that gets the application gets accepted and everything, there will be a siting study by the FAA. I hear they come out for like 3 or 4 days and hang out at the airport measuring and looking and doing things to see what the best location is for the tower. And then environmental assessment, we'll have to airspace and preliminary design. So it's a lot of steps. But we're trying to stay ahead of the curve so that when each step is ready, we're ready to go.
Got a question. Is there right now property that could be allocated for placement so that private development doesn't overrun future needs?
Yes, so each of the red squares with the dots are showing on this airport layout plan as a potential tower location and are currently not occupied by any development, and we would plan to set those aside and not allow development on them.
And no wetland mitigation for them? Or
There
is
might
there?
be.
Might
That's
be,
part of the
yeah.
environmental assessment and the site selection that the FAA will do. That's all goes into it. What's going to be the best site? One of the options there is not actually on airport property. It's that lower one, right there. Yeah. So that would be another one that. If you guys are really wanting that spot, you may want to look at negotiating with that property owner.
Are those in order of preference?
I don't know that they're in order of preference. I can't answer that one. Do you
I think
recall?
that comes down to FAA's preference, and that takes time for them to come out and do the study in future years.
So we're looking at 8 years, maybe,
Oh, I don't know.
ish.
From my understanding and conversation, FAA, once we submit our application, it can take up to a year to hear back on an approval or disapproval from the FAA. And once that approval is in place, we have 5 years to identify the funding and secure it, and then have the tower under construction. So if we submit in a month, we might hear back from the FAA a year from now. And then a year from now, we would have a 5-year timer starting to secure the funding and begin the construction of the tower.
So it very well could be 8 years.
It
by
could
the
be
time-
8 years, yeah.
And if we don't move on building the tower due to budget constraints or other reasons, that is not a black mark against the airport if we reapply for the tower program in the future.
We need it as soon as we can get it.
How long is the application good for? If they decline it, can you reuse it, or do you got to go through the whole process again to resubmit?
I will ask and find out.
From looking at the application, they're looking for a lot of demographics and operations numbers and based aircraft, things like that. So my assumption would be that we just update those numbers to current numbers and resubmit.
I did want to point out too, when you were talking about the operations to date and where we're going, we did, as part of the application, we looked at the fiscal year operations from October 1 last year till September 30th, and you guys are over 112,000 for the fiscal year already. So Christian's ballpark of 115 is right in there. So our estimate. So yeah, and I think with that, I mean, that's one of the things they're really looking at is those operations. I think that's one of the bigger items. So being over 100,000 operations is key. So you're already there.
Well, the longer we wait, the higher the escalating costs of doing it, especially something that we really need.
Any questions for Kim? Okay.
Prior to moving on to the next item, I would like the board to make a recommending vote for approval on submitting this application.
I would like to recommend that we submit an application for the tower.
Second.
Okay, first by Brian, second by Claire. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Okay.
Yes.
All right, Vintage Aviation Museum, Sean O'Brien.
Good afternoon. We have submitted a development proposal a number of weeks ago. It's gone past the 6-week waiting period. And so then on the next step is for myself to have a conversation with you folks in regards to what our proposal is. That particular proposal, as we discussed about a year ago in front of this very board, was that we'd like to do it in phases. Once we had a piece of land that was identified as a good prospect for us, at least at that time, we began the process of generating some renderings. These renderings are a little rudimentary, but we don't want to get too carried away with taking the time and effort and expense to create really good site plans until after we know for sure we're going to be able to secure that land. Then we would go ahead and jump through that process. Phase 1, sorry, Christian, do you have a copy of that? I can't get this to cooperate electronically.
Let me see what I have on this email. Those are all the files I have, but I can kind of zoom in and as you talk.
Okay, I think I can get this going.
Yeah.
So phase 1 would consist of a 42 by 50 hangar, which is listed as hangar A on the Google Earth rendering that we did, along with the required ramp space, which is approximately 150 feet long and 45 feet wide. And then phase 2, well, sorry, I apologize. And that's also the approximate 90 space parking spot. I'll let Christian catch up a little bit. So that would be the first hangar. That would be completed within the first year. That is the second hangar, a 40,000 square foot hangar, which would be completed within 3 years, and the approximate 40,000 square feet of ramp directly in front of that. And then as part of this process, there would be also a second parking lot, overflow parking lot. There's a 53-acre triangular portion of land that is currently unable to be built upon because of its proximity to the AWAS. And so what we propose is to be able to utilize this as overflow parking for events and activities. But we also suggested to the airport at a meeting about 3 weeks ago that this would be a great location for overflow parking for Wings and Wheels as well, because the event is growing to the point of where more off airport parking would be needed, but something close by where people would be shuttle bused, and this would be an ideal location for that. But by creating this complex the way we have it envisioned, we create a aviation destination not only for Spanish Fork, not just for Utah County, but for the entire state of Utah, especially with the how close the airport is to the I-15 corridor. And so while Ryan Smith is doing great things with Salt Lake County and Salt Lake City, let's do some great things for Utah County and the surrounding areas. And so we want to do our part to help the tourism industry, but also do our part to help the young generation in the schools today to try and get them integrated into aviation some way, somehow. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of these type of aircraft that we have either in our collection or intend to have in our collection that the schools these days, even in the Salt Lake City Community College program, they do not have the ability to and desire to teach about these types of aircraft, but there's a lot of aircraft out there that need services and work to be done, and there's a huge void that's getting bigger and bigger as the generation that can work on these is aging out, and so we want to help fill that gap to help make sure that a lot of this stuff stays around for many years, not just for our benefit, but for the historical benefit and much more.
So just to recap the development process, an individual make a development proposal. It'll then be posted on our airport website for 45 days for communication. Once that 45-day period is up, the Airport Development Review Committee will get together and discuss that. And that consists of our engineer, our chairman, the attorney, our community development planner, myself, the airport manager, and our public works director. And we'll discuss and then make a recommendation to the airport board. So following this proposal, it kind of fell in the same timeline as our airport layout plan update and our tower identification on the airport layout plan. And the parcel that has been proposed by Vintage Aviation Museum was also identified as a potential tower location. And so considering that, the Airport Development Review Committee's recommendation to the airport board was that pending the discussion and recommending vote from the airport board that we hold this parcel open until the tower location is solidified by the FAA.
Yeah, that was my question. Is it the same spot?
What is your timeline?
We can get started as early as spring.
Are there any other places around the airport in consideration?
We have talked with Christian in regards to other potential areas, and we're open to other locations. We would still use the same development process in regards to the phases that we outlined.
Engineering-wise, the triangle, maybe it isn't a big issue, but is there an issue with sewer at that location?
So that particular location, the nearest tie-in for sewer is about a half a mile away. It's only money, but it's not the end of the world. I've had a few different conversations with Public Works about where the nearest tie-ins would be and what the timelines would be for those to be brought closer.
Christian, can you go back to your map where you were drawing and kind of draw where that tower is?
It's where the blue and green squares are?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. And this location, was it just due, I guess, both of you, is it due to where it is in proximity to roads and to the runway, or what made this a good location for the museum?
So for us, ideally, we don't want to be boxed in by other buildings. And with this, we would have an uninterrupted view of the runway, aircraft activities, the mountains off to the east, and it would be a great general aviation feel, so that when people come out to visit the museum for whatever event activity that would be happening, it would definitely increase the ambiance and the attraction to be coming to that location rather than being put amongst a bunch of other hangars and create a warehouse setting.
Where's that other tower location on this?
So
I'm
this
just
first,
thinking through it.
location showing is on current airport property. Another potential location would be land acquisition just to the southeast, and then the other two locations would
Yeah,
be
I
on the
think
north
that's
side.
fair,
Yeah. Over in here.
Does the airport not own this property south of that? Not that one, but south.
No, we don't. Yeah. You can see our property lines on here in the green crosshatch.
You know what the city's plan is for the roads back there? That's not exactly an easy place to get to.
I know with industrial development in that back area, they will be widening and bringing in additional corridors to that area, but I'm not quite sure what their master plan entails for transportation.
Corey does. That's his expertise.
I do. Associated with the industrial development that Christian's mentioning, this whole area will get significant improvements in roadway. We've actually, a contractor's just starting construction on a lift station right where Christian's pointing there, so that opens up a lot of potential. It's just a matter of timing over the next year or following years as well. That whole area is going to really open up and have a lot more access and corridors.
I think it would be beneficial to have it. The concern is tower location at this point. I think it's a great project. I would be in favor of it. I am. I am hesitant to okay that spot right now. But if the tower doesn't go there, I would say, yeah, you should use it. But I don't know how to propose that without first finding out what FAA might want.
Yeah. I would suggest that, the board does not recommend this location for approval at this time. And if Vintage Aviation Museum wants to identify another parcel and go with that, then they're welcome to. But for this particular parcel that they've applied for, I'd recommend that we hold it in consideration for a future tower location.
Especially if we would have to buy other property. It's a good project.
Thank you. We put some time and effort into this to try and figure out what's going to be the best, not only for us, but also for the airport and the community. If I remember correctly, during our last conversation about 3 or 4 weeks ago, wasn't it going to be around January that another decision would be made as far as trying to narrow down where potential site locations would be?
That's up to the FAA's timeline, pending our packet submittal to the FAA for the tower.
Yeah, my question would be, is there any way to hold his application until that approval was known? Because I would hate for him to have to go through the process again.
I think in a motion, if unanimous or majority, that could, hold up.
Because I think that's what is essentially what we're saying over here is right, is that we like the project, we just don't want to pigeonhole ourselves if we end up losing a tower because of it or having to do something different. Would that be okay with your timeline? Obviously, it
Yeah,
delays
that's totally fair. I mean, if it looks like it's going to be, months and years, then we might take a look at alternate sites, and we may even, in the meantime, just to be proactive, work with Christian to identify other sites so that we can see, all right, if this doesn't work out by a certain timeline, we give up on this one and go to plan B.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely worth doing regardless, like you said, because I don't know all the rules at all because I see property there, I'm like, oh, it could go there. And then I know that we get told, oh, there has to be within so many feet of this or that or the other thing. So I think doing that, but I would agree. I think we put it on hold, or at least pause it for right now for making a recommendation, and then we can move forward with the recommendation once we know a little bit more about the tower. That's what I would be comfortable with as well.
Was that a recommendation?
I'll make a recommendation if we know whether. So I recommend that the board puts the application of the Vintage Aviation Museum on hold pending more information from the FAA about tower location.
Second.
Pending that spot.
Yeah, pending that one spot.
Otherwise, he can go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we'd have to, if he does choose a different spot, he has to kind of start the process over a little bit, unfortunately. But for that spot, yeah.
Okay. Second.
Okay, recommended by Jesse, second by Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Great, thank you very
Yes.
much.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other items or concerns that need to be brought before the board? Okay, just by way of information, PROT, if I can remember it right, the portable reduced oxygen training enclosure that the FAA provides is going to be in Spanish Fork the second week of May. So I've been working with the FAA and Glenn Wicker, who was an old instructor of ours back in the flight school. He's done a lot of work to get that to come here. And so this is just by information now, but after the first of the year, we'll get an online form out that people can sign up. And there's limited space, I think, to 150. And the requirement will be whoever does it has to have a current medical and has to be at least 18 years old. But if you haven't been hypoxic before, here's your chance. So just by way of info sharing.
Then this next board meeting is January, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
First Thursday in January.
Okay, that is everything. I guess we'll adjourn. We have a second? Second by Claire.
Yes.
All in favor?
Yes.
All right, meeting adjourned.
Yes.